It was supposed to be a routine academic inquiry, one that would shed new light on the most enigmatic and unsettling cases of paranormal activity. I had spent years researching, poring over dusty archives and conducting interviews with those who dared to share their stories. But nothing could have prepared me for the discovery that awaited us at the heart of it all: Mandela's Catalogue. The name itself seemed like a joke, a relic of some long-forgotten era when paranormal enthusiasts thought they could contain and study the unknown. Yet, as I delved deeper into my research, I began to realize that this catalog was more than just a collection of dusty case files. It was a gateway to the darkest recesses of humanity's psyche. I had stumbled upon an obscure reference to Mandela's Catalogue in a long-abandoned thesis from 1978. The author, a renowned parapsychologist named Dr. Helena Anders, had claimed that she had spent years compiling a comprehensive database of paranormal cases, each one more disturbing than the last. The catalog itself was said to be hidden away in a secure facility, accessible only through a series of cryptic passwords and clearance levels. I had finally managed to obtain one of these clearances, courtesy of a mysterious acquaintance who seemed to know more about me than I cared to admit. As I stood outside the entrance to the facility, my heart racing with anticipation and fear, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay hidden within those walls. Would I be able to uncover the truth behind Mandela's Catalogue, or would I become its latest victim? I pushed open the heavy metal door, and a warm hum of machinery enveloped me. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burning plastic. I had been warned that this facility was no longer maintained, that it was left to rot after Dr. Anders' disappearance in 1978. But I didn't believe the rumors. I had spent years searching for this place, scouring archives and conducting interviews until finally, I found myself standing before the entrance of Mandela's Catalogue. The room was dimly lit, with rows upon rows of computer servers humming softly in the darkness. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I made my way deeper into the facility, my footsteps echoing off the cold metal walls. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was tall and imposing, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to bore into my very soul. "Welcome," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I see you're interested in our little project." I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. The stranger handed me a password-protected tablet, adorned with cryptic symbols and codes. "You'll need this to access the catalog," he said, his eyes glinting with a knowing light. "But be warned, once you start down this path, there's no turning back." I took the tablet, feeling a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. As I began to navigate the digital labyrinth, I stumbled upon a case file that made my blood run cold. It was a series of audio recordings, taken from a woman who claimed to have been stalked by a supernatural entity in her home. The voice on the tapes was unmistakable. It was the voice of my own mother, whispering sweet nothings into my ear when I was just a child. But that was impossible. My mother had passed away when I was a teenager. And yet, here I was, listening to her voice, feeling a chill run down my spine as I realized that this catalog was more than just a collection of cases. It was a gateway to the darkest corners of my own mind. I spent the next few hours poring over the case files, my eyes scanning the pages with a growing sense of unease. The cases were diverse: UFO sightings, demonic possessions, and even a string of bizarre disappearances in rural areas. But it was the way they were presented that really caught my attention. Each case was listed under a single cryptic title: The Unseen, The Devourer, The Echo Chamber. The descriptions were sparse, but the tone was unmistakable. Each case was shrouded in an air of mystery and terror. I began to feel like I was reading a collection of urban legends, passed down through some sort of twisted parapsychological folklore. But as I delved deeper into the catalog, I started to notice something strange. Each case seemed to be connected to a particular theme: fear, anxiety, paranoia. It was as if Dr. Anders had somehow managed to distill the essence of these emotions into a series of digital files, each one more disturbing than the last. And then there were the dates. They spanned decades, sometimes centuries. I felt like I was reading through some sort of twisted history book, with entries that seemed to defy logic and reason. One case file in particular caught my eye. It was titled "The Memory Eater." The description was brief: a woman who claimed to have lost her memories after being subjected to some kind of experimental procedure. But what really caught my attention was the audio recording included with the file. It was a series of whispers, each one more urgent than the last. They seemed to be coming from all around me, echoing off the walls of the facility itself. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I wasn't alone in this place. Something was listening to me, watching me. And then the recording stopped. The silence was oppressive, like a physical presence in the room. I knew then that I had to keep digging, no matter what horrors I might uncover. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I turned around, there would be someone lurking in the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but as the days went by, I began to realize that something more sinister was at play. I started to experience strange visions, flashes of images and sounds that didn't make any sense. It was like my mind was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't quite decipher the message. One night, I woke up to find a figure standing in front of my bed. It was tall and imposing, with eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The figure didn't move or speak. It just stood there watching me. And then it vanished. I woke up with a start, my heart racing. I knew then that I had to get out of there. But as I packed my bags and prepared to leave, I realized that something was off. The furniture in the room seemed to be shifting, like it was alive. And when I looked out the window, I saw a figure standing on the fire escape. It was the same person I had seen in my dreams. I knew then that I was not alone. Whatever was happening to me, it was connected to this place. The facility, the catalog, everything seemed to be linked to some kind of sinister force. And then there were the messages. They started appearing on my phone and computer like a digital presence had taken up residence in my mind. "You can't escape," they would say. "You'll never leave." I knew then that I was trapped in this place with no way out. And as I looked around at the strange and wondrous machines that seemed to be watching me, I realized that I was not just a researcher, I was a test subject. I spent the next few days trying to make sense of the messages that had started appearing on my phone and computer. They were always cryptic, sometimes in code, but they seemed to be hinting at something much larger than myself. I began to feel like I was trapped in some kind of digital labyrinth with no clear way out. One message read, "Echo 1 activated." Another said, "Project Erebus initiated." I had no idea what these messages meant, but they seemed to be connected to the facility and the catalog. I decided to dig deeper, poring over lines of code and searching for any clues that might lead me to the truth. And then I stumbled upon something. A hidden folder on one of the computers, filled with documents and files that seemed to have been erased from history. The first file I opened was titled Project Erebus. It was a report detailing some kind of experiment or procedure that had been conducted at the facility. But as I read through it, I realized that something was off. The language was technical, but it seemed to be describing something that defied explanation. And then there were the diagrams. They showed what looked like a human brain, but with strange markings and symbols etched into its surface. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I had stumbled upon something much bigger than myself, something that could potentially change the course of human history. And as I delved deeper into the files, I began to realize that I was not alone in this quest for knowledge. There were others out there, searching for answers to the same questions that I was, but they seemed to be hiding something, and I knew that I had to be careful. The messages continued to appear, hinting at a larger conspiracy that threatened to engulf us all. As I continued to dig through the files and messages, I started to notice connections between seemingly unrelated cases. A series of murders that had taken place in different cities across the country all had one thing in common: a small, intricate symbol etched into the victim's flesh. It was as if the killer was trying to send a message, but what did it mean? And then I stumbled upon a case file for a woman who had gone missing several years ago. Her name was Sarah, and she had been reported missing after leaving her job at a research facility. As I read through the file, I noticed that she had worked on a project called Erebus, the same project that I had discovered in the hidden folder. But what really caught my attention was the symbol etched into her arm. It was the same symbol that had been found on the victims of the murders. Suddenly, the connections between the cases started to make sense. They were all connected to the facility and the catalog, but there was something more sinister at play. I began to suspect that the facility was not just a place for research, but a breeding ground for something much darker. And then I received a message from an unknown number. "You're getting close," it said, "but you'll never be able to escape." I knew then that I had stumbled upon something big and that my life would never be the same. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the screen as I tried to make sense of the connections between the cases. Suddenly, the cursor on the screen began to move on its own, scrolling through lines of code and data that I didn't recognize. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that someone had gained access to the database without my knowledge or permission. The cursor moved faster now, displaying events from within the facility in real time. I saw images of scientists in white coats, working on experiments that seemed to defy explanation. I saw footage of patients being brought into the facility, their eyes glazed over with a strange, almost hypnotic stare. And then I saw myself. The cursor zoomed in on my image, displaying every detail of my face and body. I felt a wave of fear wash over me as I realized that this intruder had access to my personal data. But it was what happened next that made my blood run cold. The cursor began to manipulate the events, altering the course of history. It changed the outcome of past experiments, making them seem like nothing more than failures. And then, it began to change the present. The images on the screen shifted and distorted, revealing a world that was not my own. I saw buildings and streets that I had never seen before, filled with people who looked like they belonged in a different dimension altogether. I realized that this intruder was not just manipulating events from within the facility, but altering reality itself. And then, everything went black. I found myself standing in front of a door that I was certain did not exist. The walls around me seemed to shift and writhe like living things, as if they were trying to conceal some terrible truth. I pushed the door open, and a wave of darkness spilled out into the corridor beyond. The air was thick with the stench of decay and rot, and I could feel the weight of madness pressing down upon me. As I stepped through the doorway, I saw that I was surrounded by rows of identical doors, each one leading to a different destination. Some were labeled with cryptic symbols, while others had names like Subject 17 or Project Erebus. I felt a growing sense of unease as I realized that I was being led deeper into the heart of madness. Every step I took seemed to bring me closer to some hidden truth, but it was a truth that I was not sure I wanted to know. The corridors twisted and turned, leading me through a maze of dark corridors and abandoned laboratories. I saw evidence of experiments gone wrong, equipment shattered and broken, and the remains of those who had been subjected to their cruel whims. And then, I stumbled upon a room filled with mirrors. Every surface was covered in glass, reflecting images that were not my own. I saw versions of myself, each one twisted and distorted, as if they were reflections of different personalities within me. I felt a growing sense of disorientation as I realized that the mirrors were showing me fragments of my own psyche. Some showed me as a hero, while others depicted me as a monster. The images blurred and shifted, making it impossible for me to discern what was real and what was not. I knew then that I had stumbled into the dark corridors of madness, where the lines between reality and illusion were constantly shifting. And I knew that I would never be able to escape. I stumbled through the dark corridors, my mind reeling from the images I had seen in the mirrors. The echoes of abandoned sanity whispered in my ear, warning me to turn back while I still could. But I knew that I couldn't. I had to see this through to the end. As I walked, the walls seemed to close in around me, the shadows deepening into black holes that sucked all light and hope out of existence. I heard the whispers growing louder, a cacophony of terror and despair that seemed to come from all directions at once. The words themselves were indistinguishable, but the tone was unmistakable, a cold, mirthless laughter that seemed to come from beyond the grave. And then, suddenly, we were here. We had reached the end of the corridor, and before us lay the cataloging room. It was a vast, cavernous space filled with rows upon rows of shelves, each one laden with files and data terminals that glowed like lanterns in the darkness. The air was thick with the scent of decay and corruption, and I could feel the weight of madness bearing down upon me like a physical force. As we approached, the whispers grew louder still, until they became a deafening roar that threatened to consume my very soul. And then, in an instant, it was silent. The darkness seemed to hold its breath, waiting for some hidden signal to release its horror upon the world. I took a step forward, and as I did, the lights flickered on, illuminating rows of data terminals that displayed the darkest secrets of the cataloging room. The files themselves were labeled with names like Erebus and Nyx, and they seemed to be calling out to me, tempting me to open them and unleash their horrors upon the world. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that this was it, the culmination of all my research, the moment of truth when I would finally understand the secrets of the cataloging room. But as I reached for the nearest terminal, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the screen, in letters that seemed to be written in blood, was a single message: "Welcome home." As I stared at the screen, the message, "Welcome home," seemed to sear itself into my brain. The lights in the room began to flicker and dim, as if they too were trying to escape the horrors that lurked within the cataloging room. The whispers returned, a maddening chant of voices that seemed to come from all directions at once. I felt myself being drawn towards the data terminals, as if by an unseen force. As I reached out to touch them, visions began to flash before my eyes, images of twisted corridors and abandoned laboratories, of horrors beyond human comprehension. The lines between reality and hallucination blurred and shifted until it was impossible to tell what was real and what was not. I saw myself walking through a maze of reflections, each one leading to a different version of myself. Some were grotesque and distorted, while others seemed to be echoes of my own sanity. The visions grew more vivid and intense until I felt like I was drowning in a sea of madness. I tried to shout for help, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of terror that surrounded me. And then, suddenly, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, my head throbbing with pain. The room was silent and still, the only sound the soft hum of the data terminals in the distance. But as I struggled to sit up, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the wall opposite me, in letters that seemed to be written in blood, was a single message: "You are not who you think you are." I stumbled to my feet, my mind reeling from the revelation. The cataloging room, once a mysterious and sinister place, was now laid bare before me. I saw the true purpose of the cataloging room, the hidden truth behind its walls. And what I saw left me shattered, like a mirror dropped on stone. The cataloging room was not a repository for human knowledge or data. It was a prison, a holding cell for entities from beyond our world. The files and terminals were mere illusions, created to keep the prisoners contained, to prevent them from escaping into our reality. I realized that I had been playing into their hands, using my knowledge to help them gather more data, more fuel for their power. And in doing so, I had become a part of their plan, a pawn in a game I did not understand. The message on the wall, "You are not who you think you are," was true. I was not who I thought I was. I was a participant in a far larger scheme, one that threatened to consume us all. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling from the implications. The cataloging room seemed to close in around me, its walls pressing in on me like a physical force. I knew then that I had to escape, to warn others of the danger that lurked beyond our world. But as I turned to flee, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure stood in the shadows, watching me. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and I knew that I was not alone in this place. The game had only just begun, and I was about to play a part that would change my life forever. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my eyes fixed on the figure in the shadows. As I drew closer, it became clear that it was a woman with long, flowing hair and skin as white as marble. Her eyes seemed to bore into my soul, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. She reached out a hand and touched my forehead, and suddenly I was flooded with visions of the cataloging room's true purpose. I saw the countless files and terminals, each one containing a piece of knowledge that could be used to control and manipulate others. I saw the prisoners, beings from other dimensions who were being held against their will. But as I delved deeper into the cataloging room's secrets, I realized that some secrets were meant to remain hidden. The more I learned, the more I understood that there were consequences to delving too deep into the cataloging room's mysteries. The woman's grip on my forehead tightened, and I felt a surge of energy flow through me. It was as if she was trying to warn me away from something, but I was too far gone to listen. I took another step forward, and the world around me began to distort and blur. The walls of the cataloging room seemed to melt away, revealing a vast expanse of nothingness beyond. I felt myself being pulled towards it, as if by an unseen force. And then everything went black. When I came to, I was standing in a desolate wasteland, surrounded by nothing but sand and rock. The woman was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel her presence still, watching over me from the shadows. I stumbled forward, my heart pounding in my chest. What had I just gotten myself into? And what lay beyond the veil of reality?